She begged him to stop. She cried. She screamed. She even tried to run away. But in the end, they forced her into a marriage she never wanted. Imagine this. You're standing in a wedding dress, your hands shaking, your heart breaking, and the man in front of you is someone you don't love, someone you don't even respect. That was Sophia, a girl who had everything, wealth, status, luxury, until one day it was all taken away. And to save their reputation, her own parents made a deal. They forced her to marry a man everyone looked down on, a poor, quiet, single father. The moment she saw him at the altar, she felt her world collapse. "No, this can't be my life," she whispered. He wore a simple suit. He had nothing, no status, no power, no pride. At least, that's what she thought. People in the crowd whispered and laughed. Her life is over. She married beneath her level, and in that moment, Sophia believed them. She thought her life had ended, but what she didn't know was that the man she was forced to marry was hiding a secret so powerful it would destroy everything she believed about him and everything she believed about herself. After the wedding, her nightmare only got worse. He took her to a small, simple house. No luxury, no servants, no comfort. "This is where I'm supposed to live?" she said in disbelief. She hated every second. She hated the house. She hated the life. And most of all, she hated him. But here's where things started to change. Because that poor man never argued, never raised his voice, never disrespected her. Even when she treated him coldly, he responded with kindness. And then there was his son, a little boy who ran up to her one morning and said, "Good morning, Mama." That single word started breaking the walls around her heart. Slowly, she began to notice things. Strange things. Expensive cars passing by their house. Powerful men speaking to him with respect. Secret phone calls where his voice wasn't weak. It was commanding, confident, powerful. And one day, she followed him. What she saw next will leave you speechless. The same man she called poor walked into one of the biggest corporate buildings in the city. Security guards opened doors for him. Employees stood up when he passed. And then she heard the words. That changed everything. "Welcome, sir. We've been waiting for you." "Sir?" No, not just sir. CEO, the man she was ashamed of, was actually the richest, most powerful man in the room. Maybe even in the entire country. At that moment, her heart didn't just break. It shattered. Because she realized something far more painful than the truth. She realized she never truly saw him. Not his kindness, not his patience, not his love. She only saw what she wanted to see. And now, the question is, what happens when the truth comes out? Will he forgive her? Will she earn his love? Or has she already lost the only man who truly cared for her? This is not just a story about wealth. This is a story about pride, about judgment, about regret, and about a love that was almost destroyed before it even began. Watch till the end, because the final decision he makes will leave you emotional and questioning everything you believe about love. She screamed, "I would rather die than marry him." But the doors were already closing on her freedom. The chandelier above sparkled like 1,000 watching eyes, judging every breath Sophia took. The grand hall was filled with wealthy guests dressed in elegance, their whispers sharper than knives. Such a beautiful girl, what a waste. Marrying him? Her family must be desperate. Sophia stood at the entrance, her white dress flowing behind her like chains she couldn't escape. Her hands trembled, but her face remained still, frozen between pride and heartbreak. She wasn't walking toward love. She was walking toward sacrifice. Just hours ago, she had begged her parents. "Please, don't do this to me," she cried, her voice shaking. "I can work. I can fix things. But don't force me into this marriage." Her father didn't even look at her. His voice was cold, firm, and final. "You don't understand the situation. Our name is already falling apart. This marriage will save us." "Save us?" she whispered, tears falling. "Or save your pride?" Her mother stepped forward, holding Sophia's shoulders tightly. "This is your duty. Sometimes life is not about what we want. Those words echoed in her mind like a prison sentence. And now, here she was, at the altar. Her eyes slowly moved toward the man she was about to marry, Daniel. He stood there in a simple black suit that didn't quite fit perfectly. His shoes were clean, but worn. His expression was calm, almost emotionless. In one hand, he held the small hand of his young son, Noah, who looked around the hall with innocent curiosity. The contrast was painful. Sophia, raised in luxury, surrounded by wealth. Daniel, quiet, simple, a man society clearly judged. Is this a joke? She thought bitterly. This is the man I'm supposed to spend my life with? She felt anger rising inside her chest, not just toward her parents, but toward him too. Why did he agree to this? She wondered. Doesn't he have any pride? As if sensing her thoughts, Daniel glanced at her for a brief moment. His eyes were deep, calm, almost understanding. But Sophia quickly looked away. I don't need your sympathy, she told herself. The priest began speaking, but the words felt distant, like noise in the background of a nightmare. Marriage is a sacred bond, two souls becoming one. Sophia wanted to laugh. This is not sacred. This is a transaction. Her heart pounded louder with every passing second. When the priest finally asked, Do you take this man as your husband? The entire room went silent. This was her last chance. Her fingers clenched tightly. Her mind screamed, Say no, run, leave everything behind. But then she saw her father's face in the crowd. Cold, warning, unforgiving. If she refused, her family would collapse completely. Their debts, their reputation. Everything would be destroyed. She closed her eyes, and in that moment, she gave up her freedom. I do, she whispered. The words felt like poison. Then came Daniel's turn. I do, he said calmly, without hesitation. No fear, no doubt. That irritated her even more. How can he be so calm, she thought. Doesn't he realize what this is? The priest smiled. You may now seal your vows. Daniel stepped closer. Sophia's heart raced again, not with excitement, but discomfort. As he leaned in slightly, she froze. But instead of forcing anything, Daniel gently paused, giving her space. That surprised her. For a brief second, she looked into his eyes again. There was no arrogance, no greed, no desperation, just calmness, respect. He didn't force the moment. Instead, he simply stepped back. I understand, he said quietly, so only she could hear. That confused her. What does he understand, she wondered. But before she could think further, the hall erupted into polite applause. Though many clapped out of obligation, not joy. The ceremony was over. Just like that, she was married. As Sophia walked down the aisle beside Daniel, she could feel every eye on her. Judgment followed her like a shadow. This is the girl who married beneath her status. Her life is over. Each whisper stabbed her pride. She kept her chin high, refusing to show weakness. Outside, the bright sunlight fell harsh, almost mocking. Daniel opened the car door for her. She hesitated for a moment, then got in without saying a word. The drive was silent, heavy, uncomfortable. No music, no conversation. Just two strangers bound by a forced promise. After a long silence, Daniel finally spoke. I know this isn't what you wanted. His voice was calm, steady. Sophia turned toward the window, her expression cold. You think, she replied sharply. He didn't respond immediately. I won't force anything on you, he continued. You can take your time. She frowned slightly. Why are you acting like this? She snapped. Like some kind of noble man? I'm just being honest, he said simply. That irritated her even more. I don't need your kindness, she said. And don't expect me to play the role of a happy wife. Daniel nodded slightly. I don't expect anything from you. That answer caught her off guard. What kind of man says that? She thought. The car finally stopped. Sophia looked outside, and her disappointment deepened. A small, modest house stood in front of her. No guards, no luxury, no grand entrance. This is where I live now, she whispered in disbelief. Daniel stepped out, and opened her door again. "Welcome home," he said. "Home." The word felt foreign. As she stepped out, she looked at the house once more. Everything she had ever known was gone, and standing beside her was a man she didn't understand, a man she didn't want, a man she believed had nothing. But deep down, something about him felt different, and Sophia had no idea. This forced marriage was not the end of her life. It was the beginning of a truth that would shake her entire world. This place, this is where my life begins now. Sophia stood still at the entrance of the small house, her suitcase beside her, her heart filled with disbelief. The paint on the walls was slightly faded, the garden untrimmed, and the silence around the area felt unfamiliar. This wasn't the kind of neighborhood she had ever imagined living in. Back in her old life, everything was polished, perfect, and controlled. There were servants for every task, luxury in every corner, and comfort in every breath. But here, there was nothing but simplicity. Daniel picked up her suitcase quietly and walked inside. "Come in," he said calmly. Sophia hesitated for a moment before stepping in. The house was clean, but modest. A small living room with an old sofa, a wooden table with slight scratches, and a few framed photos on the wall. She noticed one picture, a younger Daniel holding baby Noah, smiling genuinely. That was strange. She had never seen him smile like that. "Your room is this way," Daniel said, leading her down a narrow hallway. "Your room, not our room." That detail didn't go unnoticed. Sophia entered the room and looked around. It was simple but neat. A bed, a wardrobe, and a window that let in soft sunlight. It wasn't luxurious, but it wasn't uncomfortable either. Still, it wasn't her world. "I'll let you rest," Daniel said, placing her suitcase down. "If you need anything, just ask." She nodded slightly, not meeting his eyes. As he left the room, Sophia sat down on the bed and took a deep breath. "What have I done?" she whispered to herself. But deep down, she knew the truth. She hadn't chosen this. The next morning began differently than any morning she had ever experienced. No servants knocked on her door. No breakfast was prepared for her. No schedule was planned. Instead, she woke up to the sound of small footsteps running toward her room. The door suddenly opened. "Good morning, Mama." Sophia froze. Noah stood there, smiling brightly, his eyes full of innocence and warmth. "Mama?" The word hit her unexpectedly. "I'm not your mother," she said awkwardly. But Noah didn't seem to care. He ran toward her and hugged her tightly. That caught her completely off guard. She had never experienced affection like this. So pure, so natural. "I'm happy you're here," Noah said softly. For a moment, Sophia didn't know how to respond. Her hands slowly lifted, then gently rested on his back. "Good morning," she replied quietly. From the doorway, Daniel watched silently. There was a faint softness in his eyes, but he said nothing. As the days passed, Sophia started facing a reality she had never imagined. There were no servants to cook meals, no one to clean the house, no one to organize her life. She had to do everything herself. The first time she tried to cook, it was a disaster. The vegetables were overcooked, the spices were wrong, and the kitchen turned into chaos. "This is impossible," she muttered in frustration. Daniel walked in, observing the situation calmly. "Need help?" he asked. "No," she replied quickly. "I can handle it." But clearly she couldn't. That evening, dinner was barely edible. Sophia sat at the table, expecting complaints, criticism, maybe even anger. Instead, Daniel took a bite and simply said, "It's okay." "Okay?" she repeated, surprised. Noah smiled. "I like it." Sophia blinked. Are they pretending? She wondered. But their expressions were genuine. No judgment, no mockery, just acceptance. That confused her more than anything else. Days turned into weeks, and slowly something began to change. Sophia started learning. She learned how to cook simple meals. She learned how to clean. She learned how to manage a life without luxury. It wasn't easy, but with every small success, she felt something new, a strange sense of independence. At the same time, she began noticing Daniel more closely. He woke up early every morning, prepared Noah for school, worked long hours, and still came home with enough energy to spend time with his son. He never complained, never raised his voice, never treated her poorly, even when she was cold toward him. One evening, Sophia accidentally dropped a glass, shattering it across the floor. She froze, expecting frustration. "I'll clean it," she said quickly. But Daniel gently stopped her. "You'll hurt yourself," he said, carefully picking up the pieces. His tone wasn't controlling. It was caring. That moment stayed with her. But there was something else. Something she couldn't ignore. Every now and then, expensive cars would pass by their house slowly. Too expensive for this neighborhood. Men in formal suits would sometimes stop outside, making calls while glancing toward Daniel's house. It didn't make sense. One afternoon, Sophia saw Daniel outside, speaking briefly to a man in a luxury car. The man looked respectful, almost nervous. Daniel spoke calmly. Then the man nodded and left immediately. "What was that about?" Sophia asked later. "Just work," Daniel replied. "Work?" She frowned. "What kind of work involves people like that?" He didn't answer. That only increased her suspicion. Another day, she overheard something that made her heart race. Daniel was on a phone call. "Yes, delay the deal," he said firmly. "I'll review everything tomorrow." "Deal? Review?" His tone wasn't casual. It was authoritative, confident, like someone used to making big decisions. Sophia stood silently, listening from a distance. Who is this man? She wondered. Because the more she observed him, the less he seemed like a poor man. His clothes were simple. His home was modest. But his behavior? It didn't match. That night, Sophia lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts were restless. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. "He's not what he appears to be." For the first time since the marriage, she wasn't just annoyed. She was curious, and maybe just a little drawn to the mystery. Because beneath the quiet man she once rejected, there was something powerful, something hidden, something waiting to be discovered. And Sophia had no idea. She was standing at the edge of a truth that would change everything she believed about him. The moment she saw the truth, her entire world collapsed in silence. It started with a feeling she couldn't ignore anymore. Sophia sat by the window, watching Daniel leave early in the morning, just like he always did. But today felt different. Her instincts were louder, sharper, almost demanding answers. "This isn't normal," she whispered to herself. For weeks, she had been noticing small, strange details. Expensive cars slowing near their house, well-dressed strangers speaking to Daniel with respect, the way he carried himself with quiet authority. And that phone call, "Delay the deal. I'll handle it tomorrow." That wasn't the voice of a struggling man. That was the voice of someone powerful. Today, she needed the truth. Without thinking twice, Sophia grabbed her bag and quietly followed him. Daniel walked down the street calmly, dressed in his usual simple clothes. Nothing about his appearance suggested wealth or power. Sophia kept her distance, careful not to be seen. "This better not be a waste of time," she muttered under her breath. He took a taxi. She followed in another. The city slowly changed around them. The narrow streets turned into wide roads. Small buildings turned into towering glass structures. Sophia's heart started beating faster. Where is he going? Finally, the taxi stopped. Daniel stepped out, and Sophia froze. In front of him stood one of the most luxurious corporate buildings in the entire city, massive, modern, and surrounded by tight security. "This place," she whispered, her eyes wide. "This is for elite businessmen, CEOs, billionaires." Daniel paid the driver and walked straight toward the entrance. Sophia quickly stepped out of her taxi, her hands trembling slightly. No, this doesn't make sense." She followed him again, her steps slower now, filled with uncertainty. At the entrance, something unbelievable happened. The security guards immediately straightened their posture. Then they opened the doors for him. "Good morning, sir." "Sir?" Sophia's breath caught in her throat. That can't be right." Daniel didn't react with surprise. He simply nodded, like this was completely normal, like he belonged there. Sophia rushed forward, slipping inside before the doors closed. Her heart was racing now. Everything felt unreal. Inside, the building was even more luxurious. Marble floors, elegant lighting. People in formal suits moving with purpose. And then, it happened again. Employees stopped as Daniel passed. "Good morning, sir." "Welcome, sir." Respect. Genuine respect. Not forced. Not fake. Sophia felt dizzy. This is impossible. She followed him at a distance, her steps unsteady. Daniel walked confidently toward a private elevator. A private elevator. He pressed a button, and the doors opened immediately. Before stepping in, he paused for a brief second, almost as if he knew something. But he didn't turn around. The doors closed. Sophia stood there, frozen. What is happening? Without thinking, she rushed to the reception desk. "Excuse me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "The man who just entered, who is he?" The receptionist looked at her politely. "You mean Mr. Daniel?" Sophia nodded quickly. The receptionist smiled. "He's the CO." The world stopped. "What?" Sophia whispered. "The CEO of this entire company," the woman repeated calmly. Sophia's legs nearly gave out. No, you're mistaken." But deep down, she already knew. Everything was starting to make sense. The cars, the phone calls, the confidence, the respect. All of it. Sophia stumbled back, her mind spinning. This can't be real. But something inside her pushed her forward. She needed to see it with her own eyes. She made her way upstairs, her heart pounding with every step. When she reached the executive floor, everything looked even more exclusive. Quiet, powerful, untouchable. Through a glass wall, she saw a large boardroom, and inside, Daniel. But this wasn't the same man she had been living with. He stood at the head of the table, surrounded by powerful businessmen, men in expensive suits, men who looked like they controlled industries. And yet, they were listening to him, respecting him, waiting for his words. "Let's begin," Daniel said firmly. His voice was different, stronger, commanding, confident. A man in the room spoke carefully. "Sir, the final decision is yours." "Sir," again. Sophia's chest tightened. She pressed her hand against the glass, her breathing uneven. I married him. The man she had pitied, the man she had disrespected, the man she believed had nothing, was the richest, most powerful man in the room, maybe even in the entire city. Tears filled her eyes, not just from shock, but from realization. I was wrong, completely wrong. That night, Sophia sat in silence, waiting. Her mind replayed everything over and over again. Every word she said to him, every cold look, every moment she judged him. "I treated him like he was nothing," she whispered. The door opened. Daniel walked in, calm, composed, just like always, as if nothing had changed. But for Sophia, everything had changed. "Stop," she said, her voice shaking. Daniel paused. She stood up slowly, her eyes filled with emotion. "Who are you, really?" she asked. He looked at her quietly. "You already know." "Then why?" she demanded. "Why hide it? Why let me believe you were poor?" Her voice cracked. Daniel walked closer, his expression calm but serious. "Because I needed to know something," he said. "Know what? If someone could accept me without money." The words hit her like a storm. "I didn't want a marriage built on wealth," he continued. "I wanted something real." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "And what did you find?" she asked softly. Daniel looked at her for a moment. Then he said honestly, "I found someone who didn't see me at all." Silence. Heavy. Painful. Sophia felt her heart break in that moment. Because he was right. She hadn't seen him. Not even once. And now, it was too late to take back everything she had done. Or so she thought. I thought I married a man with nothing. But in the end, I was the one who had nothing at all. The room was silent. Sophia stood there, her eyes filled with tears, her heart heavy with a truth she could no longer escape. Daniel's words echoed in her mind again and again. I found someone who didn't see me at all. Each word felt like a mirror, forcing her to see the person she had been since the day of their marriage. Cold, judgmental, blind. For the first time in her life, Sophia felt ashamed, not because of her situation, but because of her actions. Her voice trembled. I didn't know. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, calm as always, but this time there was distance in his eyes. Not anger, not hate, just distance. And somehow that hurt more. You didn't try to know, he said quietly. That single sentence broke something inside her. Sophia lowered her gaze, unable to defend herself. Because he was right. She had judged him from the very beginning. She saw his clothes, his house, his lifestyle, and decided his worth without ever looking deeper. I was wrong, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Silence filled the space between them again. But this silence was different. It wasn't cold. It was heavy with truth. Tears slowly rolled down Sophia's cheeks as memories flooded her mind. The way she refused to look at him during the wedding. The cold tone in her voice whenever he tried to speak. The way she ignored his kindness as if it meant nothing. And yet, Daniel never reacted with anger, never humiliated her, never revealed the truth to prove her wrong. Instead, he stayed patient, calm, respectful. Why? She asked suddenly, looking up at him. Why did you tolerate all of it? Her voice cracked as she continued. Why didn't you just tell me the truth and end everything? Daniel looked at her for a long moment before answering. Because I made a promise, he said. A promise, she repeated softly. To give this marriage a real chance, he replied. Not based on status, not based on money, but based on understanding. Sophia's heart tightened. And even after everything, you still tried? She asked. He nodded slightly. I saw something in you, he said, even when you were pushing me away. That was it. That was the moment she broke completely. Sophia covered her face as she cried, not out of weakness, but out of realization. No one had ever shown her this kind of patience before. No one had ever believed in her beyond her flaws. And she had almost destroyed it without even noticing. I don't deserve this, she said through her tears. I don't deserve your kindness. Daniel didn't interrupt her. I treated you like you were nothing, she continued. And all this time, you were more than anyone I've ever known. Her voice softened. But it's not even about your wealth anymore, she added. It's about who you are. She slowly lowered her hands, revealing her tear-streaked face. You're kind, patient, strong, she said. And I was too blind to see it. Daniel's expression didn't change much, but something in his eyes softened slightly. Sophia took a small step forward. I'm sorry, she said sincerely. For every word, every look, every moment I made you feel less than who you are. Her voice was no longer shaking with confusion. It was steady, honest. I can't change the past, she continued. But if you give me a chance, I want to make things right. Daniel remained silent. The air felt still. Sophia's heart pounded as she waited. This was no longer about pride. No longer about status. This was about something real. Something she had never truly felt before. After a long pause, Daniel finally spoke. Why now? He asked quietly. Sophia didn't hesitate. Because now I see you, she replied. Simple, honest, true. For the first time since their marriage, she wasn't looking at him with judgment. She was looking at him with understanding. And maybe something deeper. Daniel studied her face carefully, as if searching for any sign of doubt or pretense. But there was none, just sincerity. Slowly, he stepped closer. Sophia held her breath. I never wanted perfection, Daniel said. I just wanted honesty. Her eyes filled with tears again. You have it now, she whispered. Another moment of silence passed. Then Daniel gently reached for her hand. Sophia froze for a second, then slowly tightened her fingers around his. That small touch carried more meaning than any words. I'm not promising this will be easy, Daniel said. I know, she replied softly. But if we move forward, he continued, we do it honestly. Sophia nodded. Together, she added. For the first time, Daniel gave a faint smile. And in that moment, something shifted. Not dramatically, not magically, but genuinely. Days passed, and life slowly began to change. Sophia no longer saw the house as small. She saw it as warm. as real. She cooked, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She spent time with Noah, not as an obligation, but as a mother. And Noah, he had always accepted her. "Mama, look what I made," he would say, showing her his drawings. This time, she smiled without hesitation. "It's beautiful," she said, meaning every word. Daniel noticed a change, not just in her actions, but in her heart. She laughed more. She listened more. She cared. And for the first time, their house didn't feel like a place of strangers. It felt like a home. One evening, as the sun set softly through the window, Sophia sat beside Daniel. "I used to think happiness came from money," she admitted. Daniel looked at her quietly. "But now I understand," she continued. "It comes from people, from love, from being seen and accepted." She turned toward him. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Daniel didn't say much. He simply held her hand again. And this time, she held on tighter. Because now, she knew what she almost lost. And she wasn't going to lose it again. Sophia had entered this marriage as a victim of circumstance. But she stayed by choice. Not because Daniel was the richest man alive, but because he was the only man who showed her what true richness really meant. And in the end, she didn't just find a husband. She found love. Real quiet, unshakable love. The kind she once thought didn't exist. The kind she would now never let go.